Sunlight touched the shore. Mina and her friends were ready to sail. Mina smiled and said,
"It's easy. I'll use magic to conjure up a boat for you."
After Mina cast her spell, a tiny, rickety boat appeared before them, so small and fragile it seemed unlikely to survive even the gentlest waves. Suddenly, the boat tipped and collapsed, leaving Mina wide-eyed in shock. Mina could only offer an awkward, sheepish smile as her friends let out a collective sigh. Out of options, Mina and her friends walked the beach, hoping to find something useful. Andrea pointed at something.
"Wait, guys. Is that a shipwreck?"
A medium-sized sailboat, weathered and worn, lay beached behind the rocky outcrop, its hull cracked but still mostly intact. Toby tapped the boat's side and found it surprisingly sturdy. With a nod from everyone, they decided it was worth fixing. Mina and Andrea cast a spell together, and the torn sail slowly mended with shimmering threads of magic. Toby and Mina gathered wooden planks to patch up the hull of the boat. Before long, they finished the repairs, and the boat looked almost brand new. Mina and her friends pushed the boat into the sea. They stood together, ready to begin their journey. Mina was the first to board the ship.
"Let's go! Captain Mina is ready to set sail."
Mina took out the green and blue gems. They shimmered softly in her hands, glowing with quiet, mysterious light. Both gems glowed brightly, casting straight beams of light into the sea. Mina and her friends followed the glowing path by boat, heading into the unknown. As Mina and her friends sailed on, a soft, mysterious song suddenly echoed from nowhere. A mermaid sat on a rock in the middle of the sea, gently plucking the strings of her harp. Her music was hauntingly beautiful. Toby and Nina stood on the boat, entranced by the music, as if under a spell. Mina, too, was lost in the trance. She turned the rudder, steering the boat toward the source of the music. Andrea frowned and said,
"Everyone, calm down. Don't listen to that voice."
Mina snapped out of it and quickly turned the rudder, steering the boat back on its original course. Then Mina rushed over to wake Toby and Nina, shaking them urgently to break the spell. Andrea let out a sigh of relief. She smiled gently, glad to see her friends back to their senses. The boat returned to its course. And at last, the island of Loomera appeared ahead. A giant rainbow arched behind it, shimmering in wonder. Mina and her friends docked their boat on the island's sandy shore. Mina took out the 2 gems. Their green and blue lights shimmered brightly, casting a path deeper into the forest. Mina and her friends followed the glow of the gems into the forest at the heart of the island. The forest was filled with strange trees, glowing flowers, and peculiar plants that gently moved with the breeze. The island's guardian spirit appeared before them, floating gracefully in midair.
"If you seek the gem of justice, follow the rainbow to the far end of the island."
Mina nodded firmly, her eyes filled with determination. Suddenly, a low, thunderous growl rumbled from the bushes. Something unseen was drawing closer. Out from the tall grass by the path peeked a tiny creature, a little monster, curious and unexpectedly cute. Mina and Andrea looked at the tiny creature, and a laugh slipped from their lips. They couldn't help but be charmed by its cuteness. Toby and Nina exchanged a glance, thinking that perhaps this place wasn't as frightening as the others had been. Andrea and Nina walked side by side, chatting casually with a lightness in their steps. Mina and her friends went deeper and found a strange creature, a cat-like being that could fly. Toby tried to catch it, but it darted away with swift, graceful wings. Suddenly, the nearby bushes beside Toby released a burst of purple smoke. Andrea quickly cast a protective spell the moment she saw the purple smoke. Andrea conjured a shimmering bubble around the purple smoke, trapping it before it could spread. Mina rushed over to check on Toby, her eyes scanning for any sign of injury. Mina and her friends continued their journey until they reached an old hanging bridge stretched across a towering waterfall. Mina and Andrea stepped onto the bridge, crossing slowly and carefully with each cautious footfall. Toby and Nina carefully made their way across. After Mina, their footsteps light and cautious on the swaying bridge. Nina lost her footing and slipped, tumbling into the depths of the ravine below. Mina fell to her knees in the middle of the bridge, tears streaming down her face, heartbroken that she couldn't save Nina. Toby reached for Mina's hand, his grip gentle but steady. Though grief hung heavy between them, they quietly comforted one another. Though their hearts were heavy with sorrow, they knew they had to keep moving forward. After walking for a while, they stumbled upon a group of rabbits, all clad in tiny suits of armor. Mina raised her wand high, chanting softly as she cast a spell. hoping to lull them all to sleep. One by one, the armored rabbit slowly collapsed into sleep. Her spell had worked. Andrea stood quietly, suspicion rising as she pondered the strange events since they set foot on the island. Before they could catch their breath, a thunderous roar echoed, sending birds scattering into the sky. A towering stone golem stood before them, its massive frame casting a shadow over the path. The stone golem swung its massive arm toward Mina and her friends with crushing force. Toby fell hard to the ground only to spot a sword lying beside him, its origin unknown. Toby lunged forward and drove the glowing sword into the golem's chest, cracking its stone body. The stone golem shattered, exploding into fragments of rock that scattered everywhere. A shard of stone from the exploding golem struck Toby's head. He collapsed to the ground, motionless. Mina rushed to Toby's side, panic in her voice as she called his name again and again, her eyes wide with fear. Toby smiled and said,
"I can't go on. Mina, you have to go on."
As soon as he finished speaking, Toby's body shimmered, then gently dissolved into golden dust, vanishing into the air. Mina's heart ached as tears streamed down her face, her sobs echoing in the stillness. She felt the weight of loss pressing down on her. Andrea's eyes filled with tears, her sobs soft but full of sorrow, matching Mina's heartache. But Mina and Andrea continued their journey, their steps heavy with sorrow, yet filled with quiet resolve. Mina and Andrea finally reached the giant beanstalk. They began to examine its thick vines with curiosity and awe. Mina looked up at the rainbow-touched beanstalk and cast a levitation spell, but nothing happened. Andrea stood still and said,
If magic won't work, then we'll just use our own 2 hands. Let's climb up.
Andrea and Mina climbed the giant beanstalk with great effort, braving fierce winds and dizzying heights. At last, they reached the top. Mina stood on the summit of the beanstalk, panting and whistling through her lips in exhaustion. Mina leapt onto the rainbow stretched out before her, landing with a gasp, her body trembling from exhaustion. Suddenly, the giant beanstalk snapped, sending Andrea plunging below. Mina couldn't even reach out in time. Mina sank to her knees, tears spilling as grief overtook her. She wept with all her heart, lost in sorrow. Mina thought of her friends, Andrea, Toby, and Nini, and her heart ached with deep, unbearable sorrow. Though the sorrow weighed heavily on her, Mina rose to her feet and pressed on. She had to save the village no matter what. Mina reached the old tower at the rainbow's end and used her magic to float up to the glowing red chamber above. In the chamber, Mina found the island's guardian spirit holding a red gem, seated at the center. Silently, it pointed toward the window. Mina looked out the window and saw her friends trapped inside a giant floating bubble suspended in the air. Toby and Nina were trapped in nearby bubbles, but their faces lit up with joy when they saw Mina. Andrea was there too, trapped in a bubble floating farther away. Mina smiled through her tears, relieved to see her friends still alive. The guardian spirit of the island said,
You must choose between your friends' lives or this gem.
Mina looked out at her friends, then turned back to the gem and said softly,
I would choose my friends.
Mina's friends were released from the bubbles and gently floated into the chamber. The guardian spirit of the island stood up with calm eyes, the gem in his hand gone.
But what about the village's curse, Mina? How will you break it without all the gems?
Mina stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm.
I don't know what we would do without the gems, but if we stay together, I believe we will definitely find a way.
As soon as she finished speaking, a red light drifted toward her. Mina stared at the gem in her hand, confused. She didn't know how it had come to her. The guardian spirit said with a smile,
You have justice in your heart. It's not about numbers. It's about valuing every life. Even if you have only 3 friends, their worth is no less than that of 1,000 villagers. Every life is equal.
Mina closed her eyes and softly whispered a thank you to the island's guardian spirit. Mina holds the 3 gemstones in her hands. Suddenly, they shine brightly, filling the area with blinding light. Suddenly, Mina and her friends appeared in a strange place. She looked around, confused about where they were. Toby and Nina were just as confused. They wandered around cautiously, trying to make sense of their surroundings. Mina looked confident.
There's no mistake. We're at the Forsaken Grounds. We're close to the end, and just as close to a new beginning.
At last, Mina and her friends arrived at the Forsaken Grounds. But what could possibly be waiting for them here?